Now, as the AU celebrates, North Africans, especially in Egypt, Libya and Tunisia, are hoping the organization can address the challenges the countries are facing. Yasser Hakim discusses the AU's role in the recent revolutions in North Africa and conflicts in that region.
The revolutions in the 3 North African countries have been a platform to assess the role of the African Union in North Africa as it tries to strengthen the foundations of democracy promotion and conflict prevention.
AU was very weak when dealing with developments in North Africa. It has, however, issued strong statements backing the transition to democracy and aspiration of the people. In Libya, however, the AU refused foreign intervention in internal affairs when France and NATO joined in with the rebels. It was different in other conflicts.
Other conflicts such as the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Central African Republic. The organization had a more active role in sending troops from 6 countries to assist the Central African Republic's government and then pushing rebel leader Michel Diotodia for a deal to form an 18-month transitional parliament.
In Congo, the Union was positive in signing a settlement by member states not to intervene in internal affairs of the country and aid in building democratic institutions. It also had a role in the 6-month truce between the government and the rebels.
A truce that was violated in the last couple of days by the M23 rebels and the government, clashing for the first time since last November. The example of Mali poses another question. Can Africa solve African problems?
AU agreed to French military intervention against terrorists in Mali, which proves AU weakness. African countries need to give more to AU if we want to solve our own problems. I partly blame North African states for not giving more attention to African Union in conflict resolution.
Experts here say there should be more closeness on the economic front as well. The new democracies in North Africa face severe economic challenges, and the AU can make use of the huge business potential in these states. In Egypt's case, it has distanced itself from Africa during the last decade. The new leadership, however, has made it clear that its policies are weighing towards more involvement with the African Union and African affairs. This is Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Let's now cross to CCTV's Beatrice Marshall, who's standing by in Addis Ababa with the very latest from the AU summit.
Well, thank you very much indeed. A few minutes ago, the heads of state and government from African states just left here. It is a little quiet this evening, but it's been a long day of bilateral meetings, sideline meetings, and a closed-door session here by the Assembly. Tomorrow will be another closed-door session. They will be deliberating on the agenda presented before them by the Executive Council. Well, Robert Nagila has been following all the latest developments for you from the sideline meetings, the bilateral meetings, and of course a bit more of the closed-door sessions that went on here before the Assembly. Robert?
Well, today was the opening ceremony of the 50th African Union Summit. Unfortunately, it was behind closed doors, as these things always are, so I can't really tell you much about the deliberations that went on today. However, what I can tell you is that a couple of scientific awards were given out to outstanding individuals in their particular fields, and then the new kids on the block, that's the new recently elected presidents, were given a chance to present, or rather to give their maiden speeches. Now, I want to single out Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta for one particular reason, because he brought a very interesting topic that he wants brought onto the top of the agenda of Africa. Uhuru Kenyatta basically wants the continent to have a discussion about how the continent conducts itself during and after general elections are held in each particular country. Now, this is very interesting because we all know that Kenya itself, 2007, had problems, post-election violence preceding the elections there, and several other countries as well. We're talking about Zimbabwe, we're talking about a couple of countries in West Africa. Now, he has offered to host the dialogue to try and find a solution on how Africa conducts itself during and immediately after elections, so that countries do not go back on the democratic gains that they have made in the last few years since independence. So this is a very interesting topic that he wants brought to the top of the agenda. and one that perhaps we need to look out for in the coming months. Like I said, today was the opening ceremony. Now, we do know that tomorrow will be the closing ceremony. Now, there's still the big issue that a lot of people are looking out for. That is the ICC question that has not been deliberated yet, and we do expect a vote on that tomorrow. Beatrice?
Robert, thank you very much indeed. Of course, there are several agendas there that the Assembly will be focusing on tomorrow. Africa is calling for a common position on the Millennium Development Goals. Africa is saying that they were not consulted before when the MDGs goals were set there, and they want the post-2015 Millennium Development Goals to include homegrown solutions for Africa's problems. Another issue that Africa will be considering tomorrow will be the question of the International Criminal Court and the Kenyan cases before it. African countries want a common position on that, and they are saying that the African continent has been unfairly targeted by the ICC. Well, I spoke on the sidelines of the African Union summit here in Addis Ababa. I spoke with Jendai Fraser, a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. Let's listen in on what she had to say.
I think that it's important that the countries of Africa really look very carefully at how the ICC has been operating since its inception in 2002, and the fact that they are only bringing cases against Africans, African leaders especially, but just Africans in general, I think is really cause for pause for African countries to say, is this a global institution, or is this an institution that's being used against Africa? And so I think it's right to, at this point, reflect, have some deliberations, and perhaps take a different stance towards the ICC.
What is Africa's common position being discussed at the moment at the African Union?
Well, my understanding, because I'm not in the decision-making, I'm in the halls of the AU listening to what people are saying, is that they're asking, in particular on the Kenya case, that the case be reverted back to the Kenya courts, which obviously there's a new judiciary, there are a new constitution, and so there are new institutions that can actually take up this case, or in fact that the case be dismissed, or at the sort of extreme that African countries actually withdraw.
What is the international community's reaction to that proposal that African countries may withdraw from the Rome Statute?
I mean, I think that the international community should understand it. I mean, I think there are those who are feeling like, well, wait a minute, you have to support, you can't support impunity, anywhere in the world, and certainly not in Africa. And that's true, but I think that anywhere in the world is the key point. If the ICC is a court that's about global justice, then why haven't there been cases brought in other parts of the world? Syria, for example, even if you want to talk about Chechnya, there's all kinds of places in the world where these cases can be brought, but only when a great power is trying to overthrow a leader of an African country or influence the outcome. Let's take, for instance, Gbagbo in Cote d'Ivoire right now. Obviously, I think he lost that election, but should he be before the ICC right now? Look at Libya and the case that was brought against Gaddafi. Well, certainly there were human rights violations in Libya, but on all sides. And so is it because NATO was on one side that then they bring cases using the ICC? And even in the case of Kenya, where the Western powers very clearly tried to use the ICC against the election of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto.
Indeed, Jendai Fraser speaking to me a little while ago. Well, that will be the focus, or one of the focus of the issues being considered here at the African Union Summit. And of course, a few minutes ago as well, SADC member states met and discussed the issue of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Central African Republic, and Madagascar. And those are some of the issues that will be coming up on the agenda tomorrow. Another closed-door session, and then the deliberations will come to an end sometime tomorrow afternoon. For now, back to you in Nairobi.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Beatrice Marshall there, coming to us live from Addis Ababa, looking at expected discussions at the AU summit. Now, still with that summit, Wang Yang, the special representative of the Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Vice Premier of the State Council, attended the AU summit celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity. Now, as the representative of Asian countries, Wang delivered a congratulatory speech from President Xi Jinping.
The Organization of African Unity.
In a speech delivered by Special Representative Wang Yang, President Xi Jinping congratulated the celebration of 50 years since the founding of the OAU as an important event in African and world history. The founding of the OAU has contributed a lot in promoting the African people's struggle against imperialism and racism and realizing the liberation of politics in the continent. In 2002, the AU was founded on the base of its predecessor, the OAU, and it established its important historic task to promote the realization of the African Renaissance. In recent years, the AU has achieved a lot in actively maintaining regional peace, development and stability, and it is also an important advocate for Africa integration. Seeing all this progress, the Chinese president says his government and its people feel heartfelt gladness of its success. President Xi Jinping stressed that China and Africa have always been sharing a common destiny with China, always supporting the process of African self-reliance and integration. The cooperation between China and Africa has empowered positive effects to this process. He emphasized that China is willing to further continue the cooperation between the African Union and other sub-regional organizations, supporting the important role the African Union can play in regional cooperation. China is willing to further strengthen the new Sino-African strategic relationship with all African countries and make new contributions to the peace and development and prosperity of the Renaissance of Africa. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Now, coming up on Africa Live just after this short break.
Some people think that liberals are just people who do not think about the poor people or do not think about the religious people.
We look at liberalism and the Egyptian society.
Africa, an amazing world, is coming closer to us. A new voice.
We have made an excellent beginning.
A new view. Let's watch together. We deliver news and views. Let's explore together. We get you inside real Africa. Every day, only on CCTV News.
Welcome back. A two-day conference to discuss the challenges and opportunities for the liberal ideology in Egypt and the Middle East has just concluded in Cairo. Egypt and 3 other Arab countries are currently in a transitional period after a massive wave of popular protests swept the region in 2011. This has given room for new ideologies to emerge. Adil Mahrouki reports.
Egypt's January revolution gave the country its first opportunity to freely form political parties. With that freedom, many parties began promoting their ideologies. In April, the country hosted its first regional conference for leftist powers. In May, to bridge the gap between the Arab world and Europe on the basics of liberalism, the German Friedrich Naumann Foundation in Egypt hosted a conference.
Because they are an important part in society. They are never the majority, not in this part of the world, but they're substantial groups and they're not taken seriously in many societies. So this is a chance for them to interact in a dialogue with European partners and colleagues.
Liberals in Egypt have been facing many challenges, particularly when competing with political Islam. Islamic parties gained sweeping majority, which marginalized liberal parties in these countries.
The main challenges for liberalism in Egypt and in the Arab world and maybe in the European countries too is the definition, is how do people look to liberalism. Some people think that liberals are just people who do not think about the poor people or do not think about the religious people.
Obviously, we hope that in the future the development of these societies will be, first of all, peaceful, of course, and the most possible developed in a liberal way, that is freedom for all, separation of church and state as feasible as it is possible. And we would like these societies to develop, of course, in prosperity and in freedom. It is of paramount importance for us liberals inside liberal Europe, and we hope that all the other political families in Europe will do the same.
All politicians agree that Egypt is reshaping itself, which gives a chance for any ideology to present itself to the public with the possibility to emerge. But it also makes it a tough battle.
Egypt now is exactly in the time when it needs several ideologies to appear. People need to know about the political ideologies. People are now much open to the democracy, much open to choose. People really want to choose, and in order to choose, they have to know what's liberalism, what's socialism, and what is all the political ideas.
For 40 years, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation has been following political debates in forms of seminars and educational programs in the Middle East. It sponsors selected citizens from the Middle East to take political education programs in Europe, all to support liberal activists. The foundation aims to create closer ties between Europe and the South Mediterranean countries. Like many other international organizations, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation finds a golden opportunity to approach Egypt with a philosophy of liberal politics at this period, a time where Egyptians for the first time are categorizing their ideologies. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Now to Guinea, where at least 5 people have been killed when security forces opened fire on protesters in opposition strongholds in the capital, Conakry, on Saturday. The government has confirmed that since Thursday, 11 people have been killed in violence that began over election preparations. One doctor says among the wounded are 2 girls between the ages of 6 and 8 who'd been hit by gunfire. Legislative elections set for June 30th are intended to complete Guinea's transition to civilian rule following a 2008 military coup. But the opposition accuses the government of trying to rig the vote, while regional diplomats have struggled to get both sides to take part in talks.
At 2 p.m., there were armed policemen who shot him near his home. He had just left when a woman who had a son behind her dropped her baby while running. He went back to save the baby and the police shot at him.